Okay, so it might not be something you think about every single day, but when you want it, you expect to be able to find it. I am talking about mustard. The yellow sauce made headlines recently after a Subway Canada spokesperson told CBC News that the chain is, quote, transitioning mustard vendors, which may impact the supply of yellow mustard at certain restaurants. A week prior, chatter on social media alleged that the sandwich shop had stopped offering yellow mustard altogether. One tweet said, quote, my whole world has been permanently altered. Subway discontinued regular mustard, which was a staple ingredient to my order for the last 20 plus years of my life. So I had to go in and find out for myself. I'll get a 6-inch turkey, please, on whole wheat. Do you have yellow mustard?
I'm sorry, we're out.
You're out? You have just smoky honey mustard, no yellow mustard, hey? Have you guys been out of yellow mustard for a while, or they removed it? Yeah. Okay. It is weird. So weird. Weird indeed. The employee told me it may be gone from Subway forever. Only fancy mustards going forward. So all of this mustard chat had us thinking about the little yellow seeds, especially since Canada was the world's top exporter in 2021. And most of the country's seeds are grown right here in Saskatchewan. And so we'll be joined by a host of mustard experts and lovers today on the show. We want to hear from you too. Are you a big mustard fan, or are you like my son and it's not your sauce of choice? Are you going to have mustard on your sub? Okay. Okay, let's go.
Disgusting.
Oh, I'll keep working on him. Now, have the sauces you gravitate towards changed in the last few years? Are you more sophisticated than my son? We want you to join the conversation. 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Rick Mitzel is the executive director at Sask Mustard. The organization works to grow the mustard industry for the benefit of Saskatchewan producers. And he's with me here in our CBC Saskatoon studio. Hello.
Good morning.
Don't judge my son too much. I'll keep working on him, but he did not want mustard on his sub. Not a chance.
My wife's the same way.
Oh, really? Oh, that surprises me. You, though, are... Is it fair to call you a fan of mustard? You're definitely someone who promotes the fact that we've got a lot of it here, hey?
Definitely, yeah. I love mustard. I eat all the mustard I can. And I spend a lot of time promoting the mustard industry, yes.
So when you hear that story from Subway, and I don't, they've said there's this transition, we don't know what actually will happen, but when you hear the chatter that Subway could be changing what it's offering on its menu when it comes to mustard, how do you react to that?
Well, I was surprised. I got a call on it, and so I had to do a little digging. This is 10 days ago or so.
Yeah.
And I called up a couple of different organizations, and I thought, well, I'm going to start with the mustard industry as a whole. Is it shrinking? Is there less yellow mustard being crushed? So I got a hold of a couple of the key crushers in the world, and they assured me that it's not. It's flat to slightly up. And they said it's slightly up because a lot of the yellow mustards are getting blended in with the specialty mustards now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, that's what they offered me, some kind of honey chipotle mustard. Is that where people's taste buds are heading?
Seems to be. You seem to see more and more of the specialty mustards taking off. There's mustard processors across Western Canada that are getting into that fold now, and they're mixing with horseradish, doing all kinds of things.
You brought something in, actually, a little show and tell here. Do you want to tell me what you've got in front of you?
Sure. I brought in a small jar of mustard, and it's whole mustard. And it talks on here about how this mustard been used since 1632 and has been graced on the tables of the kings of old France.
Ooh.
So it has a long, storied history, mustard, and probably much more than a lot of people realize.
It says product of France on it, but what are the chances that the mustard in here comes from this place?
Very likely, yeah. We ship a lot of... We ship probably 50% of the world's mustard around the world, and a lot of it goes to France.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that?
In France, mustard is a staple in their diet. They eat it almost every meal. They're very particular about it. They want a certain kind of mustard. They've got a very specific processing plan as well. So the government actually regulates in France how they can process mustard and make mustard. So they have to follow a very strict guideline. And so a few years ago when we had a drought here in Saskatchewan and we didn't have as much mustard as we needed, I actually got a call from the Minister of Agriculture in France and asked me, like what's really going on. They'd heard a bunch of different stories, but that's how big a deal it was to them.
Where else does our mustard go?
We ship a lot into the U.S. as well. If you go to a baseball game or a football game in the U.S. and you see the big vats of mustard and ketchup on near the condiment aisle, well, that's where a lot of that goes to. So a lot of our yellow goes there. We ship Oriental mustard into Asia, and we ship mostly the browns into Europe.
And why are we shipping so much of it away from Saskatchewan?
Again, it's like for France, for example, they're very particular about how their mustard tastes, and they want to use that certain formulation and that process and everything. So they like to do their own. It's not a big deal. U.S., we do ship some processed stuff down there, not a lot. They process a lot of their own as well. But I think it comes down to finances, and they've got the tools in place to be able to crush it. Much better than we do up here. We do have some processors up here, and we're starting to get more as well.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that, but maybe we should back up a bit. So we're talking about sending mustard seeds. Like, what exactly are we growing here? Where are we growing it? And what are we offering the world?
Okay, well, we're growing mustard seeds. So we grow yellow mustard, we grow Oriental mustard, and we grow brown mustard. And they all have different uses, of course. So the yellow mustard goes into what people put on their hot dogs. The Oriental will go into Asia, and a lot of that gets mixed with horseradish, and they make wasabi out of it. Yeah.
And then what was the third?
And then the brown goes into Europe, and that'll go into Dijon mustard. A lot of that goes into Dijon mustard.
And have we always been a major producer of mustard seed like this? We
have, and part of it is because we have the perfect climate for growing mustard. When you talk to those other countries about what they're looking for in the seed, they're very specific in what they're looking for. They want a certain size of seed, and they want a certain uniformity of seed as well. And because of the climate that we have in Saskatchewan, it allows itself to grow in that fashion.
How important would mustard be to our economy locally here?
It'd be very important. There's a lot of jobs that are spun off of mustard. There's a lot of processing. People dealing with processors in different countries. So there is a fairly big congregation of mustard people in Saskatchewan and in Western Canada.
So there is a question that we do get asked when we start talking about mustard and how it goes to all these corners of the globe. And I want to share with you a question that we received. So let's take a listen to what this person is wondering.
Hi, I'm Samantha Taylor, and I live in Regina. I like to use mustard in sandwiches. I like to use it in marinades. Mustard is a pretty versatile condiment. So my good question is, why don't we process mustard seed in Saskatchewan? We grow lots of it, and we can't buy mustard that's actually made in Saskatchewan here when we should be a world-leading producer of it.
So what's the answer to that? I know it's actually a bigger answer than maybe I was expecting. So how do you respond to that?
Well, there are some processors in Saskatchewan. We have one in Gravelbourg, for example.
We're going to hear from them in a moment. But yes, okay. But why so few?
It's probably just the distance to ship it once you've processed it then, and like to get it into those markets. Whereas if you ship the seed, it's probably more economical than shipping the processed portion. And we don't have the facilities here. There's a company in Brooks, Alberta that has set up recently, and they're doing some processing as well, a significant amount actually. So we're starting to see more of it, and as time rolls on, we may even see more yet.
What are the lessons that we could learn from a place like France that has been doing this? Are there any lessons we could learn from a country that is processing mustard?
In terms of the processing? Yeah, they do have a very specific process, and they don't readily share that with people, right? Because they don't really want the competition. But they do a very good job of processing and finding out what they need for their end-use customer. And so there are some things to be learned there.
Does it take a lot of equipment? I mean, what would be the setup? And we're going to learn more about what they've done in Gravelbourg. But from your perspective, what would it take to process more mustard seed here?
It would take more equipment for sure. There's two types of milling. There's wet milling and dry milling. So on the dry milling side, they just crush the mustard and then take the parts of it and use it as they see fit. Whereas in Europe, they're more wet millers. So they will soak the mustard and then process it so it keeps. If you look at Dijon mustard, you can see it's almost full seeds in some situations, and that's what they want in there. So just the different process and how you want to do it.
And so if we were to do that here, you're saying that the market isn't quite large enough in Canada, and the expense to ship it to the U.S., to ship it to Europe, it just wouldn't make financial sense?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to hear from the person in Gravelbourg who's been making some mustard. We've got Matt Sirois joining us today as part of this conversation. He is one of the owners of Gravelbourg Mustard. The locally owned and operated company was established in 2008 and was even featured and made a deal on CBC's Dragon's Den in 2017. So Matt joins us right now. Hello, Matt.
Good morning.
Welcome to Blue Sky.
Well, thank you.
So you've been listening to this. You came up, actually, just moments ago as somebody who is processing mustard. What is a bit of your story? How did you get into this?
Well, interesting. I've known about the company since 2008, and then it come up for sale about a year and a half ago. And Paul and I knew the company, knew the products, were very fond of it, and we're self-declared mustard aficionados, and it's been a learning process. It's been wonderful to be able to produce the mustard and introduce mustard to even the non-mustard lovers. That's probably been the biggest revelation that I've noticed in the last year and a half.
Tell me more about that. How do you convince people who aren't mustard lovers to give it a try?
Well, I think we've got 7 flavors, but the one that we created last fall, the savory dill pickle, we sort of toned down the mustard heat, just partly because we noticed at the kitchen table that our kids weren't delving into the mustard the way we would have liked. And we imagine that there are a number of non-mustard people out there, so we turned up the savory and turned down the mustard heat, and it's been good. It's been well received.
How did you become a self-declared mustard aficionado, as you say?
Well, a few years ago there was a mustard festival, so I attended that. It's such a versatile condiment that anybody that does any type of cooking at home finds so many uses for it. Be it salad dressings, rubs on different types of meat, sandwiches. It's got no sugar. I mean, if you're going to compare it, you go toe to toe with ketchup. I mean, ketchup is basically vinegar and sugar, and mustard is a superfood. It's part of the cruciferous vegetable family. So that's kind of what one of the main reasons I've gravitated towards it is because it's super healthy for us.
So you are a bit of a rarity in that you are processing and selling Saskatchewan grown mustard. That was the question that was put to us by Samantha Taylor. How unique is it to have Gravelbourg mustard in stores as you are?
Well, I think it's unique. I mean, there's certainly since COVID, there's been a real push for everything local. And to be candid, the people of Saskatchewan have been really, really good in terms of supporting a local product. And again, if you kind of tied into Subway and then pulling back on the yellow mustard, I mean, the plain old yellow mustard maybe ain't cutting it anymore. And people want something. People want a specialty mustard. They want something savory, and we've got some of that on the shelf. So we're sort of meeting that need. There was also a shortage of mustard seeds, so I think there were issues in terms of supply chain a couple of years ago. So that drove up the price for mustard for a lot of retailers, but there definitely is a push for gourmet or specialty mustard.
So how are you able to do it? Rick mentioned some of the costs that comes with processing and making your own mustard here in Saskatchewan. How are you able to do it? And I've got a bunch of questions, like how much are you making? Where are you sending it? But how are you able to do this?
Well, you cut corners when you produce, that's for sure. Cut corners in terms of some of the expenses that you could incur, you might pull back on some of that just to be able to produce it. When we bought the business, just the mustard cost itself, because of the shortage, had gone up 150 or 200%. So that was a challenge initially in 2022, is to be able to produce a local product that that was affordable in a sense, and not to have it too expensive on the shelf. We've found ways to make it more affordable for sure. You need to, but it's certainly been an interesting journey for both of us.
And is it available beyond Saskatchewan's borders?
Yes, yeah, we've got retailers in BC, Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, and we're sort of looking to grow, but obviously real proud that it's a Saskatchewan product produced in mustard country.
Mm-hmm. So you've got your own crops, like you're doing everything from growing to processing, or did I understand that correctly?
No, I wish
okay.
we could. You know, my grandfather grew mustard in the Gravelbourg area in the 60s, but of course, I can't say that I grow it and we have it from the combine all the way to the jar. That's kind of the objective. I'd love to be able to say that one day, because we don't physically grow it. We have to source it out, but we produce too much as a province to consume. That's why the conditions, as mentioned before, are just ideal in Saskatchewan for production. It's the breadbasket of the world, so we do produce lots of it. It's just nice for us to be able to refine it and do that in Saskatchewan and sell it here, as opposed to, again, going to France and consuming mustard that's from Saskatchewan. It's kind of it's a bit discombobulating to think that you could be at a fancy restaurant in Paris and consuming Saskatchewan mustard. I love it, though.
I know, I love it too. Rick, is that part of it? Is that we just grow so much of it that it has to go elsewhere? Is that part of the story?
Yeah, we would only use a fraction of what we produce for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you listen to Matt here talk about Gravelbourg mustard, I mean, it's been around for a long time, right? The company. But what do you think about when you hear someone talk about actually selling it locally?
I think it's great. Every time I get a chance, I talk to a local processor. There's a lady in Manitoba, smack dab. I've talked to her several times, and I think it's great. I hope we get more of this, because, like, I do think that the specialty mustard market is a growth market, and I think we can make a fit with it here.
So how do we make more of it? What are the conditions that what needs to happen in order to make more of it like that?
You make more mustard?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think if we just got to get the demand up, right? If we can get the local stores, he had mentioned that he's got good local support, and I think we would all over the province. I think it's just a matter of finding the right spot to produce it. You always want to kind of produce it where it's grown, right? And Gravelbourg is a great spot for that, right? Because you're right in the heart of it there.
Matt, I don't know if you want more competition, but what would we need in Saskatchewan to have more local mustards to buy on our shelves like this?
Well, it's creativity. It's there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in the province. So I think if people want to do it, I think that's good. The cost, I think, has been the challenge with the mustard prices going up and us needing to keep everything down. But the demand is there, and we're seeing it. I'll give you an example with respect to honey, with respect to even hot sauces. And there's a lot of these businesses sprouting up, producing local products that are consumed by local customers. It's great to see. We're seeing more and more of it.
Do you have any exciting developments or future plans we can expect to see from you, or just in the world of mustard in general?
Well, we always relish the thought of gourmet mustard, but we've got a couple flavors that we're formulating right now. So I think if everything goes well, we would have those launched in May or June this year.
I can always offer up my son as a taste tester. I don't know if you heard him at the very start. Not a fan of mustard. So if you can convince him that you've got something he'll like, you might be well on your way to more success.
Well, that's really been kind of the objective for Paul and I in the last year, is to really convince the non-mustard lovers that we've got a great local product that's versatile, that's super healthy for us. Perhaps I could leave a few jars and have them taste the savory dill. Like our kids use it as a veggie dip, as everything, right? It's incredibly versatile, and we were able to pull back on the heat. I think if you're raised with mustard, again, if you're in France or in Germany or other places, and you're raised having that strong mustard at the table, I think you take to it. But the savory dill is definitely a segue into the mustards. So
a gateway.
I'd invite him to taste that.
Matt, great to talk to you today. Thank you so much for being one of our guests.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That's Matt Serwa, one of the owners of Gravelberg Mustard. I'm Leisha Gravinsky. You are listening to Blue Sky here on CBC Radio 1. We'd love to hear from you today. What could Saskatchewan be doing to promote our locally made mustard, both here and abroad? Would you like to see Sask-made pretzels and mustard at your local rink? Get in touch, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Can I put you on the spot? Are you a mustard fan?
You know, I like mustard, so I've been thinking about this sort of during the show. I think that honestly, classic yellow mustard it sort of gets a bad rap. It just because it's so strong. Like there's not a whole lot like sophisticated about just French's yellow mustard, but I don't know. I think it really works well in like say a sandwich with like.
There's nothing else that belongs on a hot dog. I don't think.
Well, sure, but it's just so strong. It's just like
or
whack,
honey mustard on a hot dog.
right in the head.
It's a bit
Well, I mean, you
strong.
could.
Well,
It would change the hot. It would make it far more fancy than the majority of hot dogs that I've ever eaten. But
Well, I don't eat fancy, David.
no, well,
Who knew we could talk so much about mustard? This has been
not
fun.
me.
Yeah,
There
well,
you go.
I appreciate your 2 cents on all of our topics, but particularly on this one. So, David, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is the CBC's David Shield. You are listening to Blue Sky here on CBC Radio 1. Oh, our producer points out sauerkraut and mustard. Yes, that makes the perfect hot dog. I can live without the ketchup. If you add sauerkraut, that is a hot dog made in heaven. A couple of emails have come in. Well, one for sure from Donna, who writes, I love mustards. It's probably the most versatile condiment on the market. It's great to hear that we can buy Saskatchewan mustard processed in Saskatchewan. Our guest today, one of our guests, is Rick Mitzel, the executive director at Sask Mustard. We just got off the phone with Matt Serwa from Gravelberg Mustard, and he mentioned a couple of things that I want to ask you about, Rick. He talked about the health benefits of mustard. Is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, you bet. There's an enzyme in mustard, glucosinolates, and they're activated by water. So when they get mixed with water, they're activated. And what it does is it helps lower blood cholesterol levels, decrease blood glucose levels, and it has an antioxidant value characteristics as well.
For real?
Yeah.
Those aren't overstated?
Nope.
So what else are you able to do with mustard? What other markets are you looking to, or how might the market change?
Well, we have a whole mandate to look for new uses for mustard. We want to grow the mustard acres in Saskatchewan. You know, we're running around 500,000 acres of mustard a year, but we want to grow that. We want to get bigger. So we're working on some new uses, and one of them is potentially putting it into dog food, pet food, actually cats and dogs. And so what we would do there, the same things I talked about, it just helps the pets with gut health. So they're just healthier and happier, and everybody wants healthy and happy pets, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a lot of pets in the world, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to get much of that market in order to really boost your acres. So we're working right now with the Food Centre here in Saskatoon, trying to develop the right formula for that.
Interesting. Matt also talked about how it was a difficult couple of years for mustard. Do you want to remind us what was happening in 2021? I think the mustard crop yield was far lower than usual, and there were shortages, empty shelves. I kind of remember that. What was happening then?
Well, in 2019, we had about 400,000 acres of mustard in Western Canada. Most of that, 80 to 90% in Saskatchewan. 2020, we dropped down to 252,000, and that was just based on the fact that farmers weren't getting the price for it that they needed in order to produce it, so they switched to other crops. So the acres went down. 2021, same thing, was around 280,000 acres. And in those 2 years, we had a drought, and particularly in that southwest corner of Saskatchewan. It still kind of is there today. We're hoping that we get some rain and moisture to get rid of it.
I was just going to ask you how things are looking this year.
Well, they've got some snow here in this last shot, so that's a start anyway. So they're still pretty dry, but we're hoping for some nice spring rains.
Spring rains, yeah. Okay, well, let's go to another caller who joins us right now in Regina. We've got Carol on the line in Regina. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
You want to talk about mustard?
We used to be able to get Keen's or O'Keen's mustard in a dry form in about 4-inch metal box, and I can't see it anymore, and we're just getting it in those plastic cylinders. I use it for drumsticks Diablo, And you end up buying a couple of those plastic things, and to get what you used to be able to get, or three of them to get what you used to be able to get in a 4-ounce metal container.
And has it changed the recipe that you've been using?
No, I cut back some on the peppers. That's what I cut back on.
So you're still pleased with the end result?
Yeah, except you're buying more containers to get
Right.
the same amount of mustard if you can get it.
Now, Rick, I know you're an expert in mustard, but would you have any idea why a company like that has changed? I mean, when there's those small changes, it affects who's buying it, how much they're buying, et cetera, et cetera. So do you follow some of that stuff fairly closely?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you why they did that. I know I have people have told me that they go to like a bulk food warehouse now and they buy it in bulk as opposed to getting it in the grocery store. But I never knew that there was a change in packaging. No.
Yeah, it's always disappointing when there's a change like that. Carol, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. We've also got Jacob on the line in Saskatoon. Hi, Jacob.
Hi. Hello to your guest, Rick. And, I'm a big fan of mustard. I think it's great. It's healthy. It was kind of a sad thing that there was so little processing of it in Saskatchewan before, so kudos to the people that are. I think there was a person at the Farmers Market Cooperative that was making and selling some too. I don't know if they're related institutions or not. Expanding markets. My partner, she's Asian, and they eat the mustard leaves, and she's had me eat them. They are like, they taste kind of like mustard, a little sharp, but they're good for you, and I think they could be a potential source of markets to sell them in grocery stores for salad and the like. I don't know if that's being done in a big way or not. They are supposed to be healthier, a fair bit healthier for you than spinach, believe it or not.
Really? Where do you typically buy your mustard leaves?
Well, we grow our own.
Oh, you do? That's pretty cool, Jacob. Do you know much, Rick, about mustard leaves and how they're used in different dishes?
Well, the reason why he talked about the heat in them is the glucosinolates, which we talked about earlier, are when the plant is developing, they're in the leaves and stems and parts of the plant. But once the plant ripens off, it sends all the glucosinolates up into the seeds, and then the seeds are harvested and used for that. But that's why he's getting that sharp taste from the leaves, is because the glucosinolates are still in the leaves. And he talks about it being good for you, and that coincides with what we talked about.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Jacob, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and good luck to you, Rick.
Thank you.
I want to share with you somebody else who's doing something interesting with mustard, not just for cooking with. It's an excellent inspiration for alcohol, too, and no one knows this better than John Cote. He is head of operations at Saskatoon's Black Fox Farm and Distillery, where they started making mustard gin in 2018.
So the inspiration came from the Mustard Growers Association, and quite a few years ago they had come to us and wanted something special, and that got my creative juices going. And I thought, like in a kitchen, the mustard has to be the most versatile flavor that you can use. And when you're working behind a bar, it's really hard to find savory options, really. Usually you're looking at sweet and all sorts of different things, but rarely do you find a savory flavor. And that would be really cool to make a cocktail. So we ended up inventing a mustard gin, which I think was quite unique in the whole world. So there was a seed grower just south of Saskatoon, and they were cleaning, seed for exporting. And so we connected with him and said, here, what do you have? And then it chatted with the plant breeders and looked for, actually even within all the mustards, there's different flavors. And so we kind of looked at different ones. And then away we went to the races. And then we found out, though, that it was a really good idea, but really, really hard to execute on. Because the way we were doing it, basically, you would take the mustard and you would soak it in your gin for a few days, but it would dissolve the seed coat and turn the whole thing into a great big pot full of jelly, basically. So very hard to make, but very, very worthwhile when we were done. I hate to say this, but it's almost too popular. Some of the bartenders became fanatical about it, and I didn't like making it. And so I had written down in my little book do not make this again because it was just too much work. And then I hired this brilliant young lady from the university, and she's been helping me out for the last few years. And I said, oh, well, it looks like we should make it again. And so we made the next batch, and she went back into our little book of notes and double underlined that do not ever make this again comment, because it's very, very hard to make it, to get it to work out. So we stopped making it last year, but now we've come up with a brand new great idea on how to make it work, and we did a test run of it just before Christmas. So on the longest day of the year for the winter solstice, for the longest night of the year, we distill all night long in order to try out new recipes and new ideas. And we tried this new idea to make mustard gin, and it worked absolutely wonderfully. So we will soon be bringing it back into our lineup. So initially, that's always part of the creative process. You're trying to think of how it works. So the easiest one was, a mustard gin Caesar would be amazing, and it is. So that's a really simple thing that everybody goes home and does right away. But as soon as you start, a real favorite one of mine is using camelina oil. We use lemon juice, honey syrup, and then a little bit of floral bitters sprinkled on top, and it is just stunning.
That's John Cote from Black Fox Farm and Distillery. John says the mustard gin should make its return in the summertime. I have had the mustard gin. Rick Mitzel, have you had the mustard gin?
I have not. I've been out to that facility a few times. I went to school with John and Barb, but I have not tried their mustard gin.
Yeah, it was a bit of a joke. I was at a party, and it was kind of the end of the night, and all they had left was mustard gin, and a lot of people did not want to have it, and I was brave enough. The bartender mixed it with pineapple juice and assured me that I had a sophisticated palate, and I enjoyed quite a bit of the mustard gin and the pineapple juice. It was quite the night. I want to ask Renee Coleman if she's had the mustard gin. She's a local chef and cookbook author. She's been listening to this show. She's also created mustard recipes for spreadthemustard.com. Renee, hello to you.
Hello, Alicia.
Have you had the mustard gin from Black Fox?
I have not, but I really want to try it now.
So what is it that you love about mustard, Renee?
Okay, the versatility is really incredible. I go through a lot of mustard. I use dry mustard, grainy mustard, Dijon mustard, the yellow, stuff. I'm always excited to try a new recipe with mustard. It adds this instant bump of flavor, especially to a lot of things where you might not think, like, chili recipes, like a teaspoon or two of dry mustard to chili, to a pasta sauce, to a meat sauce, to anything that's dairy based, like cream soups, mac and cheese, right? Like cheese and mustard they're just made in heaven together. I could go on and on, honestly.
It can definitely make a box of craft dinner feel fancy. That is for sure. Yeah. I hadn't thought of putting it into chili. Does the mustard just give these recipes a bit of extra kick, or what does it add to some of these dishes?
It adds another layer of flavor. Like, you might not necessarily taste the mustard, but there's a richness to it. There's an earthiness to it. And you can tell there's something there, but you might not, know that it's actually mustard. But it just adds this warmth and richness. And I really love it in chili, pasta sauce, lasagna sauce, like honestly, anything. I'm making like a mushroom and wild rice soup, a little bit of dairy and Parmesan on there. But of course, I'll add like maybe a tablespoon of grainy Dijon. And it just adds this mellow, like richness. And it's really, really good. And it's a really great way, and it's really affordable, honestly, to add, just to kind of make your cooking a little bit more special, I suppose.
Yeah.
And especially for folks that are maybe looking to lower their salt content or calories, there's like no salt in mustard, really, or really, really low cal. So if you're watching your salt, increase what you do with mustard. Yeah.
So true. Do you have a favorite brand or a favorite type of mustard?
I do like a grainy Dijon. Several, lots of brands make it, but I like a Dijon, a creamy Dijon. Yeah. And even a little bit of honey mustard, which this might blow the listeners' minds, but I like to bake with a little bit of honey mustard.
What? Like for which kind of recipes? Where would you be putting that?
Chocolate and mustard. the mustard will add a bit of warmth, like I said, but you won't really know that it's there. And same with like, chocolate zucchini loaves, muffins. And I also like to add a little bit of dry mustard to things with I'm making like a pumpkin chocolate chip muffin. I like to think of mustard, dry mustard especially, as like being like cinnamon or cloves or nutmeg because it adds a bit of warmth and a little bit of a zip.
Renee, you are blowing my mind. I've never heard of doing this. How did you even think to do that?
Well, I've been cooking and developing recipes for a really long time, and I was just playing around, and it works really well. I always like try this stuff out on like friends and family. I'm like, hey, what do you think is in here? And then they don't really know, and I say, well, a little bit of mustard powder, or dry mustard, and they're like, what? There's a really great coffee cake on spreadthemustard.com. It's got sour cream and honey mustard and a nice cinnamon streusel. But like it all works really well together, and you can't really detect the mustard, but it's like this warmth, right, that floats through the rest of the flavors, especially with the butter and the sour cream. So
wow.
To give it a try. I know.
Rick, you are the mustard expert. Had you ever thought of mustard being put into sweet things like this?
I had not before I did this. I work very closely with the website spreadthemustard.com.
Yeah.
So I saw those on there, and I thought I'd love to try that someday, but I just haven't.
This is a whole new marketing opportunity. Think of how many more kitchens you can get into if you're putting mustard in baking like that. Renee, you kind of talked about hiding it a bit where people wouldn't expect that mustard is one of the ingredients. Are there any examples where mustard is the main event? It's a recipe that's built around mustard. I don't know, where it plays a prominent role.
Yeah, mustard works really well in cream sauces. There's like this braised chicken thigh dish with mushrooms and this lovely cream sauce. And there's probably like a tablespoon or two of Dijon. So you can taste the mustard, like mustard and chicken and beef and pork. It works really well with those flavors. Yeah.
Salad dressings is just sort of the obvious one for me. How is mustard used as an emulsifier, right? Like it prevents separation and makes such nice salad dressings, doesn't it?
It really does, with a little bit of acid and canola oil or olive oil. Yeah, you have to have mustard in a salad dressing, I think. Yeah,
it's almost a given, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I'm going to share a couple of emails here. People do still have time to call. Who knew we could talk so much about mustard? I will say, Renee, you posted this on Instagram. I shared it. And the number of people who wrote me about how excited they were for this show, I thought, I had no idea there were so many mustard lovers out there. So if you are one of them and you want to call us, there is still time, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email us, bluesky@cbc.ca. So Jim emails, I use it on almost everything, and the dry mustard is a pantry staple. I use it in many things just to add a bit of heat, and I always use a bit of dry mustard in any ground meat. Supposedly, it does something to kill off any potential bad things. And then there were mustard plasters, which was Mom's go-to cure for a cough. So effective, just the threat of it usually stopped the cough and got me off to school. That's a good one, Jim. I'll maybe threaten that with my kids at some point because they're not mustard fans, and that could get them out the door if I need them too quickly. So, Jim, thanks for writing. Suzanne also emails, I have made mustard from whole seeds several times at home. It is surprisingly easy and rewarding. And then Amy writes, I was eating chili made with mustard while Renee was talking about mustard recipes. So yummy. So, Renee, there you go. Amy was already on to what you were offering there.
Happy to hear.
Are there any mistakes, Renee, that people make with mustard? Any misconceptions about cooking with mustard or mistakes that people make?
I'm not sure. I think if the mustard averse people, if they don't want the taste of it, I think maybe they just avoid it completely. And I think that's the mistake. Like just add a teaspoon or two of Dijon to your next pasta dish. Like just try it out in smaller increments and then build up to what flavor you like. But sometimes your dish won't taste like mustard, but it just adds another layer of flavor that works really well. Like, tuck it into meatloaf and meatballs. And my gosh, I'm making a really nice Italian sausage pasta dish with grainy Dijon and a little bit of cream and chicken broth. And I'll toss that with some hot pasta and lots of Parmesan cheese. Like, you can really add mustard to anything. And don't be afraid to try out new things. I think a lot of times, a lot of home cooks stay with the tried and true, and they don't want to add new ingredients or play around with different types of mustard in their cooking. But I say go for it. Head to spreadthemustard.com for all kinds of really delicious recipes.
I'm going to have to head there after the show.
Yeah,
One last question, Renee. Just plain old yellow mustard, yay or nay for you?
Oh my gosh, on a hot dog, on a grilled smoky, yay, yay, yay. Especially if there's grilled onions and sauerkraut, it's the best.
Renee, it's always so good to talk to you. I feel incredibly inspired, and I think I'm going to be doing some baking with some mustard in the days ahead. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. It's lovely to chat with you.
That is Renee Coleman, a local chef, cookbook author, and she's created mustard recipes for spreadthemustard.com, a website that our guest Rick Mitzel is familiar with. He's the executive director at Sask Mustard. You're clearly feeling inspired, too, by all of this, aren't you?
This is amazing. I love to hear stories about mustard.
It is amazing. I want to ask you just a couple more questions about where you anticipate things heading in the next little while. You talked briefly about the conditions this year, obviously concerns about drought. We're facing climate change. And so what are you expecting in the years ahead when it comes to mustard in Saskatchewan?
Well, I think we'll get back to more normal weather patterns and the key areas like southwest Saskatchewan where they're growing the mustard. I think we'll get back to more normal. And
You're hoping we'll get back to more normal?
I'm sure they will. Droughts go in cycles, and I can see that turning around at some point, and I'm hoping it's this year. But I do think the acres will stay roughly in that 500,000 acre mark until we come up with a new use that really takes off. So that'll be a couple of years yet anyway. So I think we're going to see that, and we're going to see more the increased demand from our European customers and stuff like that as we grow. We've switched into hybrid mustards now, which give us a more consistent size of mustard and more consistent yield on the mustard. So I think the future is quite bright actually for the mustard industry.
And pet food was the one thing you mentioned. Are there other ways to expand the market that might surprise the average person? That totally surprised me. I would not have thought of mustard seed in pet food.
Well, we also work with the chemical engineering department at the University of Saskatchewan, and they've been working with a firm out of British Columbia where they take the wood chips after they cut down the logs as wood chips, and they find a use for them. So they take them, they pelletize them, and they ship them on containers over across the ocean. And one of the researchers here at University of Saskatchewan, he found that if you took mustard meal and he mixed it with these pellets, that they didn't break down with the humidity when he shipped them across the ocean. And they burned hotter than the original pellet did, too. It got more heat off of them. So we're working with him on developing that market, too. So that one's probably just as mind-blowing.
Yeah, no kidding. And is there research to help growers if we are having more difficulty with weather patterns and the unpredictable nature of some of the weather that we'll experience in Saskatchewan? Is that a large part of the research, too, that's happening right now?
Yeah, for sure. We're always researching for new things. We're working on disease resistance and nematode resistance, that kind of stuff. So we're definitely improving as we go along. We work with Egg Canada with a breeder. We have a breeder here in Saskatchewan. She helps us with developing disease resistance like clubroot, flea beetles, grasshoppers, that kind of stuff. So we're dealing with a whole bunch of different economic issues that we want to bring forward in the next few years.
Okay. It's been wonderful having you as a guest today. I just love this. So, Rick, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
It's Rick Mitzel, the executive director at Sask Mustard. The organization works to grow the mustard industry for the benefit of Saskatchewan producers. We also heard from cookbook author Renee Coleman. We heard about the mustard gin at Black Fox, and from Gravelberg Mustard, we heard from Matt Sirois with those folks. So wonderful to hear all about how mustard is flourishing in Saskatchewan.